Picture the most beautiful coastline in America. White sand so pure it squeaks under your feet. Water so clear and warm you can see the bottom from 50 feet up. Sunsets that look like someone spilled orange paint across the entire Gulf. Now picture that coastline almost completely empty. Not empty like a quiet beach on a Tuesday morning. Empty like a place that society quietly decided wasn't worth living in. This is the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, Alabama, and the forgotten edge of Florida. And the reason almost nobody permanently lives here isn't what you think.
Welcome back, everyone. We're exploring one of the most remote stretches of the coast today, and as you can hear, it's pretty windy out here.
Because here's the thing. This same stretch of coastline sits at the exact same latitude as Miami. It has the same warm Gulf water, the same white sand beaches, the same subtropical climate. Miami has nearly 3 million people crammed into its metro area. The entire Mississippi Gulf Coast, less than 300,000, spread across 100 miles of prime waterfront. So why? Why does one of the most geographically stunning coastlines in the entire country sit so quiet? The answer involves a geography so dangerous that even the land itself keeps trying to warn you. I'm F, and this is the geographic story behind America's most beautiful and most abandoned coastline.
The wind here on the Gulf Coast is relentless, shaping these dunes day after day. It's a powerful reminder of nature's force.
To understand why this coast is so empty, you first need to understand what makes it so uniquely dangerous. Pull up a bathymetric map of the Gulf of Mexico, a map that shows the depth of the water, and you'll immediately notice something the casual observer completely misses. The Gulf of Mexico is not a deep ocean basin. It's more like an enormous bathtub. Along the northern Gulf Coast, the Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida Panhandle shoreline, the continental shelf stretches outward for miles before the water gets meaningfully deep. And that shallow shelf is one of the most dangerous geographic features in North America. You see, when a hurricane churns across the open ocean, it's constantly pushing water forward beneath it. In deep water, that pushed water has somewhere to go down. But when a storm hits a shallow continental shelf, that water has nowhere to go but up. This is called storm surge, and on the northern Gulf Coast, with its massive shallow shelf, storm surge doesn't arrive like a crashing wave. It arrives like the ocean itself has decided to move inland. Not a wave, a wall. During Hurricane Katrina in 2005, the storm surge along the Mississippi coast reached 28 feet. 28 feet of ocean water moving at speed across what is essentially flat, low-lying land with almost nowhere to drain. To picture that stand in a standard room, the ceiling above your head is 8 or 9 feet. Now imagine the ocean stacked nearly 3 of those rooms high, moving inland at highway speed, carrying everything in its path. That is the geography that anyone who chooses to live here is accepting as part of the deal.
Despite the serene appearance today, this beach holds secrets of ancient tides, reminding us of nature's profound and enduring cycle.
But the danger doesn't start and end with storms. The physical geography of this coastline creates problems even in complete calm. Look at a satellite image of this stretch of coast, and you notice immediately that the line between land and water here is more like a suggestion than a boundary. The coastline is a labyrinth of barrier islands, tidal marshes, estuaries, and river deltas. The Pascagoula River, one of the last undammed rivers in the American South, spills into the Gulf here, spreading its sediment across a coastal plain that sits only inches above sea level in many places. And unlike the high limestone rock that gives Miami Beach its foundation, or the hard bedrock that anchors the Virginia coast, the soil here is soft marine sediment and compressible clay. You see, the land on this coast doesn't just flood during storms, it's actively sinking. As the sediment deposited by rivers slowly compacts under its own weight, the land subsides slowly, relentlessly, measurably. Parts of the Mississippi Gulf Coast are losing elevation at a rate of nearly ½ an inch per year. And as the land sinks, sea level is simultaneously rising. These twin forces, subsidence from below and sea level rise from above, mean that the window of livability on this coast is not just dangerous today. It is geometrically narrowing every single decade. Now you might be thinking, okay, it's dangerous, but so is Miami, so is New Orleans, so is Houston. People build massive cities on dangerous coastlines all the time. So why didn't they here? What specifically happened on this particular stretch of coast that convinced an entire civilization to quietly give up on it? The answer starts nearly 300 years ago, and it ends with one single storm that rewrote the geography of an entire region. Long before European explorers arrived, the indigenous people of this coast had already worked out the geography. The Biloxi, the Pascagoula, and the Choctaw people didn't build permanent dense settlements directly on the shoreline. They understood, as people who had lived through centuries of Gulf storms, that the coast was a place to use, not a place to anchor your civilization. But in 1699, the French arrived and ignored that 1,000 years of local knowledge entirely. The explorer Pierre Lemoyne d'Iberville sailed into the shallow Gulf and established the first European settlement in the entire Mississippi River Valley right here at a place he named Old Biloxi, near modern-day Ocean Springs, Mississippi. For a brief, strange moment, this stretch of coast was the capital of French Louisiana, the administrative center of a colonial empire that theoretically controlled the heart of North America. But the geography quickly made the French pay for that arrogance. The coast was plagued by storms. The harbor was too shallow for large ships. The soil was too waterlogged for serious agriculture. The insects were unrelenting, carrying malaria and yellow fever that killed settlers in waves. Within a few decades, the French abandoned the Gulf Coast and moved the capital upriver to New Orleans. And in doing so, they made a geographic judgment that still defines this coastline today. They decided this coast was a place to pass through, not a place to build. For the next 2 centuries, the pattern held. Small fishing communities, modest port towns, oyster harvesters and shrimpers who understood the Gulf's rhythms. The occasional resort town for wealthy Southerners seeking the beach in summer. Biloxi, Gulfport, Pascagoula on the Mississippi side. Mobile, slightly inland in Alabama. Pensacola and Panama City on the Florida edge. These were the cities, and none of them ever grew into anything approaching a major metropolis. The geographic logic was always working against them. No deep water port capable of handling modern container ships. No major river system to funnel agricultural wealth. No bedrock for serious industrial infrastructure. And always the storms. But while the coast was always sparsely populated, it still had communities. Real ones. Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, Pass Christian, Long Beach, Waveland. These were places with history, with character, with generations of families who had learned to live alongside the Gulf's danger. And then came August 29th, 2005. Hurricane Katrina made landfall near the Louisiana-Mississippi border as a Category 4 storm. Most people remember Katrina as the disaster that flooded New Orleans. But the geographic reality is that the Mississippi Gulf Coast took the direct hit. The cities of Waveland and Bay St. Louis sat almost precisely at the point of maximum storm surge impact. 28 feet of water, moving inland for miles, not slowly, not gradually. In the time it takes to make a cup of coffee, entire neighborhoods that had stood for 100 years simply ceased to exist. In Waveland, Mississippi, a town of just 7,000 people, 95% of all structures were completely destroyed. Not damaged, destroyed. The footprint of a house that had stood for 80 years reduced to a concrete slab with nothing on it. 238 people died on the Mississippi coast alone. But here's the geographic consequence that outlasted the storm itself. After the water receded and people surveyed what remained, a quiet but profound decision began to happen, not in any government meeting room, not on any official document. It happened in living rooms in Memphis and Atlanta and Houston, where Mississippi Gulf Coast survivors were staying with relatives. People decided not to go back. But even for those who wanted to return and rebuild, the geography had one final weapon. After Katrina, the major American insurance companies did a very simple geographic calculation. They looked at the storm surge maps. They looked at the subsidence data. They looked at the sea level rise projections. And one by one, they quietly stopped offering homeowners insurance along the Mississippi and Alabama Gulf Coast. State Farm, Allstate, Nationwide, all either pulled out entirely or repriced their policies to levels that made homeownership economically irrational. The market itself had declared this coast too dangerous to insure. What filled the gap was the Mississippi Windstorm Underwriting Association, the state-run insurer of last resort. Today, insuring a modest home on the Mississippi Gulf Coast costs 3 to 5 times the national average. For a $200,000 house, annual insurance premiums can exceed $8,000 to $12,000 per year. You see, this is how geography ultimately controls human settlement, not always through direct destruction, but through economic exclusion. The coast doesn't have to physically prevent you from moving here. It just has to make the financial math so punishing that only the desperate or the deeply stubborn will try. And so the emptiness compounds. No population means no economic base. No economic base means no major employers. No major employers means no reason for anyone new to come. The Gulf Coast of Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle sits in a geographic trap that gets slightly tighter every single year. Here's the thing about this coastline that I keep coming back to.
The changes we're witnessing are irreversible if we don't act now.
The beauty is real. The white sand of the Florida Panhandle, the Emerald Coast they call it, is genuinely among the finest beach geography in the world. The water off the Alabama shore is warm and clear and teeming with marine life. The sunsets over the Mississippi Sound are legitimately spectacular, and none of that matters. Because geography doesn't reward beauty. It rewards safety. It rewards stability. It rewards the kind of ground that won't be underwater in 20 years. And on this particular stretch of American coast, that ground simply doesn't exist. The indigenous people who lived here first understood that. The French who briefly tried to build an empire here understood that. The insurance companies who quietly left understood that. And increasingly, the people who once called this coast home are beginning to understand it too. America's most beautiful coastline, its most dangerous, and its most empty for a reason. This week over on my travel channel, I'm standing on one of these empty stretches of Gulf Coast watching where a neighborhood used to be. If you want to see what this emptiness actually looks like on the ground, come join me over there. And if you want to understand why Louisiana right next door faces an even more extreme version of this same geographic problem, check out that video right here. Thanks for watching. See you next time. The Gulf Coast isn't the only American coastline geography is quietly winning against. This one might actually surprise you.